Jungle. Jungle.
Alright, so it's 31 minutes past 9. I welcome you to New Week. I welcome you to Monday. I welcome you to another exciting edition of From the Newspaper, streaming live from premises of DSC's Hotel, Akpete, Ibadan. Good morning to you. We are listening to MFM 97.3, where we set the agenda and project the truth. And don't forget, you can watch us live on Facebook at AM97.3 FM. And as you're watching us, do well to like, comment, and share. Remember, don't forget this program is in form of 3 segments. The first segment is the weather forecast report of 3 major cities in Nigeria: the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, the commercial city of Lagos, and the vibrant city of Ibadan. Where the second segment on the show is the headlines making round of the Nigerian newspaper. And as usual, let's bring 4 newspapers to you every morning: the Punch newspaper, the Vanguard newspaper, the Guardian newspaper, and the Nigerian Tribune, where the last segment on the show is the details to the headlines. My name is SHAQEEROH AKINYEMI. So moving on to the first segment on the show, which is the weather forecast report. And the first city I'm bringing on is the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. At 10 a.m. in Abuja this morning is sunny with 26 degrees Celsius. At 11 a.m. is mostly sunny with 28 degrees Celsius. And at 12 p.m. is mostly sunny with 29 degrees Celsius. At 1 p.m. is sunny with 30 degrees Celsius. And at 2 p.m. is sunny with 30 degrees Celsius. At 3 p.m. is sunny with 31 degrees Celsius. And at 4 p.m. is sunny with 31 degrees Celsius. Upon the 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. is clear with 26 degrees Celsius. And at 8 p.m. is clear with 25 degrees Celsius. At 9 p.m. is clear with 24 degrees Celsius. And at 10 p.m. is mostly clear with 23 degrees Celsius. At 11 p.m. is partly cloudy with 23 degrees Celsius. At 10 a.m. in the commercial city of Lagos this morning is rain with 29 degrees Celsius. At 11 a.m. is mostly cloudy with 30 degrees Celsius. And at 12 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 30 degrees Celsius. At 1 p.m. is partly sunny with 31 degrees Celsius. And at 2 p.m. is partly sunny with 32 degrees Celsius. At 3 p.m. is mostly sunny with 31 degrees Celsius. And at 4 p.m. is mostly sunny with 31 degrees Celsius. At 5 p.m. is mostly sunny with 30 degrees Celsius. And at 6 p.m. is mostly sunny with 30 degrees Celsius. At 7 p.m. is mostly clear with 29 degrees Celsius. And at 8 p.m. is mostly clear with 29 degrees Celsius. At 9 p.m. is mostly clear with 29 degrees Celsius. And at 10 p.m. is partly cloudy with 29 degrees Celsius. Upon 11 p.m. is intermittent clouds with 28 degrees Celsius. Alright, so moving on to the last city on the first segment, which is the vibrant city of Ibadan, where we are streaming live from. At 10 a.m. in Ibadan this morning is mostly cloudy with 29 degrees Celsius. And at 11 a.m. is intermittent clouds with 31 degrees Celsius. At 12 p.m. is partly sunny with 33 degrees Celsius. And at 1 p.m. is mostly sunny with 35 degrees Celsius. At 2 p.m. is mostly sunny with 34 degrees Celsius. And at 3 p.m. is intermittent clouds with 33 degrees Celsius. At 4 p.m. is partly sunny with 32 degrees Celsius. And at 5 p.m. is partly sunny with 31 degrees Celsius. At 6 p.m. is mostly cloudy with 31 degrees Celsius. And at 7 p.m. is intermittent clouds with 28 degrees Celsius. At 8 p.m. is partly cloudy with 29 degrees Celsius. And at 9 p.m. is partly clear with 26 degrees Celsius. At 10 p.m. is mostly clear with 26 degrees Celsius. And at 11 p.m. is mostly clear with 25 degrees Celsius. So moving on to the second segment, which is the headlines make round of Nigerian newspaper. And the first newspaper I'm bringing on this morning is the Punch newspaper. The lead story on the Punch newspaper this morning says, under Buhari Tinubu, 500 generals forced out despite rising insurgency, and page 2 has the details to that story. And there is one right out to that story that says, ex-generals warn of crisis as Buhari Tinubu eras lose young generals to early retirement after shake-ups, and page 2 has the detail to that story. And above the line of the Punch newspaper this morning says, 2027 Abure will see Labour Party factions at war over who be ADC part, and page 44 has the detail to that story. Another story on the Punch newspaper says, economic recovery has begun, says Edo, and page 35 has the detail to that story. On Punch newspaper, another story says Delta deploy Airbus 330-900 NHO on Nigerian's route, and page 35 has the detail to that story. CBN pumps $1.25 billion into fuel imports, orders in 3 months, and page 31 has the detail to that story. Five pregnant Ondo girls rescued from baby factory, and page 4 and 5 has the analysis to that story. And the last story on the Punch newspaper says, Soludo's 1 million naira promise for voters to curb apathy, says APG, and page 44 has the detail to that story. To the Vanguard newspaper. The latest story on the Vanguard newspaper this morning says, NECA man, Naxima rejects Senate NSITF takeover, and page 4 has the detail to that story. And there are 2 riders to that story. The first rider says, warn against politicization of workers' fund. And the last rider says move to amend acts threatening transparency, violates ILO's convention, and page 4 has the detail to that story. Another story on the Vanguard newspaper says, Soludo's campaign moved to Orumba, and page 15 has the detail to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Nigeria loses $6.8 billion to oil production shortfall in 8 months, and page 6 has the detail to that story.
Audio Jungle. And there are 2 riders to that story. The first rider said, records 93.7 million barrel shortfall, and the last rider says, 2.6 million BPD target no longer realistic this year, says expert, and page 19 has the details to that stories. Dangote expand refinery capacity to 1.4 million barrels per day, and page 19 has the details to that story. And there's one right out to that story that says to be listed on NGX in 2026, and page 5 has the detail to that story. I will sack incompetent contractor, says Okpebolo, and page 5 has the detail to that story. Enugu government arrest man for defailing his two daughters, and page 6 has the detail to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Still on Vanguard newspaper, another story says, Serap to NLPCL accounts for missing 2.3 billion naira, $49.7 million, 14.3 million euros, 5.2 million oil funds, and page 8 has the details to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Another story says Access Holdings gross hearing up by 13.8% to 2.5 trillion naira, and page 5 has the detail to that story. And the last story on the Vanguard newspaper says resident doctors declare indefinite nationwide strike from October 31st, and page 5 has the detail to that story. Moving on to the Guardian newspaper, the lead story on the Guardian newspaper this morning says 767 local government areas without active website aimed autonomy, 3 trillion naira yearly windfall, and page 6 has the detail to that story. Organized private sector opposes move to amend NSITF Act, and page 4 has the detail to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Another story on the Guardian newspaper says Constitution Review, Al-Kalu pushes for additional Southeast states, and page 7 has the detail to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Fragile structures, egos derailed opposition as PDP forms SDP splinters, and page 6 has the detail to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Another story on the Guardian newspaper says resident doctors to begin strike Friday over unmet demands, and page 4 has the detail to that story. While we are expanding our refinery to 1.4 million barrels per day by Dangote, and page 3 has the details to that story. Still on Guardian newspaper, another story says crush terrorism now, Nigerians tax new service chiefs, and page 3 has the details to that story. Last story on the Guardian newspaper says it takes 62 signatures to pay one NDDC. Contractor says Ndoma Edwa, and page 7 has the detail to that story.
Also, moving on to the last newspaper on the second segment, which is Nigerian Tribune. And the lead story on Nigerian Tribune this morning says, Dangote Refinery aims to be world's largest in 3 years. MP 6 has a detail to that story. And there are two riders to that story. The first rider says, plan to expand production from 650,000 to 1.4 million barrels per day. And the last rider says, to be listed on Nigerian Stock Exchange in 2026. MP 6 has a detail to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Another story says, our state wastes billions on unviable airports, and page 5 has the details to that story. And there are two riders to that story that says, only 3 out of 30 airports profitable, says fan. And the last rider says, states can leverage aviation business to boost trade, says expert, and page 5 has the analysis to that stories. Ekiti 2026, 886 delegates to affirm Oyebanji as APC consensus candidate today, and page 23 has the details to that story. Story on Nigerian Tribune says, Lagos government violated court order, demolish 100 properties in Oworon Shoki, says Falano, and page 24 has a detail to that story. And there's one right out to that story that says, police deny attacking residents during demolitions, and page 24 has a detail to that story. Story says NDLEA raid Lagos nightclub over drug party, arrest over 100 suspects, and page 27 has the detail to that story.
Audio Jungle.
Resident doctors to begin indefinite strike November 1st, and page 3 has the detail to that story. Story on Nigerian Tribune says, PDP conversion, Southwest Leader Zone, Secretary to Oyo, Auditor to Ogun, and page 22 has the detail to that story. And there are 3 writers to that story that says, Ekiti Ondo to produce Deputy Organizing Secretary. Another writer says, Makinde meets both member, and the last writer says, Southeast lawmaker threatening to boycott conversion. The last writer says, Sule Lamido loyalists vote to resist to Karis emergency as PDP chairman. In page 22 has the analysis to that stories. So we have come to the end of the second segment. Before we divert into the last segment, let's go on a break. Stay tuned, I'll be right back.
Audio Jungle.
The Aces Hotels and Conference Center is one and only event place with a clear difference and tasteful excellence here in the ancient city of Ibadan. For your next and upcoming event, whether marriage engagement, wedding reception, anniversaries, conferences, seminars, or birthday, the Aces Hotels and Conference Center is affordable and fully equipped with all imaginable ultra-modern facilities for your total convenience without headache, security, power, environment, parking space, and royal service by their staff. All roads lead to the Aces Hotel and Conference Center today at kilometer 2.5 Ijokodo Akbete Akufo Road, Akere, Ibadan. For booking and more information, call 080-8746-7420, 080-9744-1898, or 080-2869-0012. The Aces Hotels and Conference Center, where comfortability speaks than words.
Ìgbà tó tó gbá ní ṣe baálé ọba gbọ́migbọ́mi, kọ̀ǹkọ̀ tó tó kọ̀ǹkọ̀ ní ṣe ọba wọn lálẹ́ odò. Bó jẹ́ tìròyìn tó pójú owó, orin tó dùn ún gbọ́ létí, àṣà, ẹ̀fẹ̀ àtàwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣítí lọ́lọ́kanjọ̀kan. Ìkànnì MFM rédíò ọba ló jẹ́ láwùjọ rédíò.
lórí Instagram @MFMtv pẹ̀lú YouTube @MFMtv. Ilé ìtura The Ace àwọn tó lápẹ́tẹ́ nílùú Ìbàdàn lákàlẹ̀ sí o. Fún ìpolówó ọjà iléeṣẹ́ yín ẹ lè pè wá sórí nọ́mbà wọ̀nyí o: 081591942 àti 47. Ẹ tún lè pè wá sórí aago yìí o: 080224841 pẹ̀lú 24 ni ẹ pè sí o. Mọ́mí àti dádì ẹ̀dọ̀wọ́ MFM ni ẹ mọ̀ gbọ́ lójoojúmọ́ nígbà gbogbo.
Ọ̀tọ̀ ni gbogbo ọ̀yà ni ó mọ̀ pera rẹ̀ lódù. Bó bá jẹ́ níbi tí kábánira mọ́tò láti òkè òkun tàbí o fẹ́ ra ojúlówó mọ́tò ilé tí ó já lálòpẹ́, iléeṣẹ́ mọ́tò Onabis Automobile òní òye àkànṣí eléyìí tó kalẹ̀ sí kìlómítà 8 Old Ife Road àdójúkọ ilé ìtajà àgbàlódé Brent sọ́ọ̀mì nílẹ̀ Ìbàdàn. Bóyá ẹ̀yin fẹ́ ra mọ́tò tàbí ẹ fẹ́ gbé mọ́tò ránṣẹ́ láti ilẹ̀ òkèrè sórílẹ̀-èdè wa Nàìjíríà, kódà orí ọ̀fẹ́ wà láti bá yín ṣe àmójútó, láti bá yín ṣe àyẹ̀wò sí mọ́tò yín. Iléeṣẹ́ Onabis Automobile òun gẹ́gẹ́ ni mò ń pè níyàn o. Ẹ̀rọ ìbánisọ̀rọ̀ wọn ni 0803-371-0636, 0803-371-0636. Onabis Automobile, boom 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 boom.
So welcome back to the show. It's still from the newspaper. Don't forget you can watch us live on Facebook at M97.3 FM, and as watching us, do well to like, comment and share. We are now in the last segment of From the Newspaper this morning, which is the details to the headlines. And the first hour making on says 500 generals falls out despite rising insurgency. Despite escalating insurgency across the country, no fewer than 500 senior military officers, including major generals, brigadier generals, rear admiral and air vice marshal, has been forced into early retirement following the changes of service chiefs under the Muhammadu Buhari and Bola Tinubu administration. The mass retirement spanning the Army, Navy, and Air Force between 2015 and 2023 stem from long-standing military tradition of disengaging senior officers who are either senior or of the same cause as newly appointed service chiefs. The move, according to the military, is aimed at maintaining disciplines, hierarchy, and operational efficiency within the service. Data collected from the media report indicate that over 500 top officers have been killed and all service in the past 8 years. However, military insiders asserted that the affected generals numbered approximately 900 or more. The Punch could not immediately confirm the figure, as the military authorities could not be reached to authenticate the claims.
The first wave of retirement occurred shortly after the former president Muhammadu Buhari appointed new service chiefs in July 2015. They include late General Toke Baruta as Chief of Army Staff, Air Marshal Sadiku Abubakar as the Chief of Air Staff, the Vice Admiral Ibo Kete Ibas as the Chief Naval Staff. Over 100 staff army officers, mainly Major General and Brigadier Generals, were forced to retire, while the Navy lost over 20 senior officers, including commodores and latest one Rear Admiral. The second phase was recorded in 2021 after Buhari replaced all the service chiefs and appointed a new State Air Marshal Isiaq Kamau, Air Force, late General Ibrahim Attairu, Army, and Vice Admiral Awal Gambo, Navy. The exercise saw about 123 generals exist Army, while over 50 senior Air Force officers and 150 Navy officers also left service. The Army gained witness other wave in May 2021 following the death of General Attairu, which led to the appointment of General Farouk Yahya, who was junior to several serving generals. The emergencies triggered the voluntary retirement over 20 generals from courses 35 and 36. Under the President Tinubu, the pattern has continued two weeks after his resumed office. The President on June 19, 2023 appointed new service chiefs, prompting mass retirement across the service. The appointment of late General Tariq Labaja, Air Marshal Azan Abubakar, and Vice Admiral Emmanuel Ogali as the head of their respective services leads to ultimately retirement of 51 Army Generals, 49 top force officers, and 17 Navy officers. Last Friday, Tinubu executed a shake-up in the military leadership. General Olufemi Oluyede replaced the General Christopher Musa as CDS. Major General Waidi Shaibu became the Chief of Army Staff. Air Vice Chairman Sunday Aneke takes over the CAS, while the Ruda Amidra Idris Abbas assumes office as CNS. The Chief Defense Intelligence, Major General Emmanuel, retained his opposition. Under the latest development, about 16 top officers are expected to disengage from service should the military tradition continue. Reacting to the situation, General Ishola Williams retired. Fourthly, the arbitrary sacking of the service chiefs and forced retirement to other top officers, describing this as a mirror of military regime. CBN pumps $1.25 billion into fuel import orders. The Central Bank of Nigeria has released a total sum of $1.259 billion to oil sector player for the importation of petroleum products and other related items into the country, the Punch reports. The amount released between the first 3 months of 2025 is against the backdrop of the instance of marketers to continue fuel import despite the availability of petrol from Dangote refinery. According to fresh data from Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, petroleum marketers import 69% of 21 billion liters of petrol Nigerians consumed between August 2024 and the first 10 days of October 2025. Between January and March 2025, a total of 2.28 billion liters of petrol were imported despite the improved refinery product output from the Dangote refinery. Foreign import, a significant consumer of foreign exchange, import the country's foreign reserve and naira to dollar rate. The volume represents one of the lowest quarterly import figures in recent years, reflecting gradual shift toward the local refinery and blending of petroleum products. A breakdown urging the Central Bank of Nigeria quarterly statistical bulletin for the first quarter of 2025. The Apex Bank released a total of $1.26 billion for import transactions between January and March. A month-by-month breakdown showed that $457.83 million were disbursed in January, representing 36.2% of the total. They dropped sharply to $283.54 million in February, accounting for 22.5%, before rebounding to $517.55 million in March, which made the largest share at 41.3% of the total forex release for the quarter. While NMDPRA data showed that the January import stood at 724.5 liters, while 760 million liters and 803.7 million liters were brought in during February and March, respectively. The struggle for market share between the Dangote Petroleum Refinery and fuel importing marketers has intensified in recent months, as both sides compete for dominance in Naira's downstream sector. It could be recalled that while some marketers have insisted on importation, the Dangote refinery has begun exporting petrol of other countries, including the United States, The 650,000 refinery has consistently boasted of its capacity to meet local fuel demand while exporting to foreign countries. However, pricing has remained a major determinant for marketers when choosing a supplier, aimed for growing competition between the refinery and fuel importers. Many operators in downstream sectors shift allegiance based on the cost advantage rather than source. Confirming the development, the National Publicity Officer of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, Chinedu Ukadike, said marketers would naturally buy from the source offering the lowest price to stay in businesses. Meanwhile, the largest energy bulletin released by the Major Energies Marketers Association of Nigeria has shown a further reduction in the estimated import parity price of the key petroleum products, reflecting sustained pressure from global oil price and exchange rate fluctuations. According to reports, the estimated import parity price of premium motor spirits has reduced to 850.46 per litre at the spot rate.
Audio Jungle.
Economic recovery has begun, says Edun. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economic, Wale Edun, has assured Nigerians that the country's economic has returned to corner. The state that is not option released on Sunday titled Nigeria Turning Toward Prosperity, reassuring the citizens that the worst days were over. According to the minister, when President Bola Tinubu took office in 2023, the country's economy was on the brink of fiscal collapse. President Tinubu, during the inaugural speech, announced on the end of the petrol subsidy regime, which are said to be shrouded in corruption. Consequently, the average price of a litre of petrol jumped from approximately 238.11 on Monday, May 28, 2023, to cover 500 naira per litre on May 30, 2025. A litre currently sells for between 910 naira and 950 naira depending on the location across the country. In June 2023, the Central Bank of Nigeria unified the country's exchange rates. As a result of naira depreciated significantly, dropping from approximately 460 to 465 naira per dollar in official market and 470 to 775 naira per dollar in a parallel market in May 2023. By May 2025, the exchange rate has fallen around 1,590.74 per dollar in the official market and 1,320 per dollar in the parallel market. However, the local currency has redeemed almost 7% of the trade at 1,457.96 per dollar as of October 24, 2025. He said those reforms have set Nigeria on a sustainable recovery path, throwing funds from education, healthcare, security, and infrastructure. Tinubu alleged that GDP growth reached 4.23% in second quarter of 2025, the fastest in 4 years, while inflation dropped to 20.12%, the lowest in 3 years. Another story says 5 pregnant Ondo girls rescued from baby factory, owner arrest. The Ondo State Police Command on Sunday said it has arrested an Ada claimant for allegedly operating a baby factory in Ore, the headquarters of Odigbo local government area of the state. According to the public relations officer of the command, Mr. Olayinka Ayalade, in a statement, the men of the command rescued 5 pregnant underage girls found in a legal facility. The police said the suspect sold babies sold 400,000 naira and above for female children and 600,000 and above for male children, adding that one of the victims was delivered a baby boy in the facility. The PPRO headed the parliamentary investigation and revealed that the suspect, Ada claimant, as accomplice had confessed to the crime, admitting that the facility was being used as a baby factory where young pregnant girls were kept until they were delivered, after which their babies were sold in an individual seeking children. To this end, the PPRO said the State Commissioner of Police, Mr. Adebowale Lawal, has ordered a full investigation into the incident to ensure that all members of the trafficking ring were apprehended and prosecuted accordingly. He further disclosed that the frantic efforts were ongoing to arrest other fleeing members of the syndicate who are currently being titrated by detectives from the Command's Gender-Based Violence Unit.
Jungle.
So just 1 million promise for voters to curb apathy, says APGA. The All Progressive Grand Alliance said on Sunday that Anambra State Governor Professor ZENO Soludo cash reward promise of every ward won by his party in the forthcoming November 8th governorship election is not an act of vote buying but a strategic move to encourage healthy competition and voters' participation across the state. Sunday Punch had a earlier report that Soludo, who is also a APGA candidate in the election, stirred controversy after announcing the reward during the party campaign rally on Umuze, Orumba South local government area on Saturday. The governor had promised to give his party supporters cash incentive for every ward won, saying when they were campaigning for the Senate. The police has proved blacklist for opposition parties and civil society organizations who described the move as an open endorsement and gross violation of the Electoral Act. But reacting in a statement on Sunday, the National Publicity Secretary of APGA, Mazi Ejimofo Okbara, defended the governor's action, insisting that it was designed to tackle voters' apathy and inspire massive turnout during the poll. Opera said the initiative would create a sense of competition that would translate into increased voters' participation, stressing that it should not be mistaken for vote buying. About 16 candidates from 16 political parties are contesting in November 8th governorship election to wrest power from the incumbent governor, Professor ZENO Soludo, who is seeking re-election. Police assures Lagos residents security and hemmed plan demolition. The Lagos State Police Command has assured residents for their safety following reports of flying disruption on the 3rd Mainland Bridge by protesting youth from the Oworoshoki area of the state. In a statement signed by the State Police Public Relations Officer Abimbola Adebisi on Monday, the command said the adequate security arrangements has been made to maintain law and order across the state. The police urged the residents to go about their lawful activities without fear and to cooperate with the security personnel on duty. Punch Online gathered that the latest wave of the demolition struck in the Koka and Ojulari area of Oworoshoki around midnight on Saturday, hours after the state government announced that about 18 affected property owners has been compensated. Eyewitness and bulldozer, accompanied by the home security personnel, moved into the community under the cover of darkness to pull down remaining structures that has been spread during the earlier phase of the exercise. It took the intervention of police operatives to restore calm and reopen the units of tragic. Some protesters alleged that tear gas was fired to disperse the crowd. Alright, so we have come to the end of From the Newspaper. Thank you for tuning in and thank you for staying tuned. My name is SHAQEEROH. Good morning.